Reverse Mentorship Friday live. Good morning, Joshua. How are you doing?
Again, happy Friday. Good to be back, and yet again another live session, and
Yes.
connecting in this virtual world that we've become so accustomed to over the last 18 months or so.
Yeah, and I'm dressed up in red for everyone who is just listening to it. No, I thought I need to bring a little bit color into my life. It's
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah. It's fascinating that you mentioned that, and it's just from a visual perspective and an audio, and thinking through that. And last night I went through an interesting exercise where I was extracting a Zoom recording. And when you download from Zoom, and you'll know this well, is it extracts three different files. So it
Yeah.
extracts the chat, it extracts the audio, and it extracts the MP4 player. And it was fascinating for me because I was thinking through this from a experience perspective and saying, what is the different types of experiences that we create inside of this 2D world?
Yeah.
You can listen to an audio version or you can watch the video. So for those of you who are just listening to us, Jens is dressed in a red t-shirt and one of his flat caps.
Yes. Not proper flat today, but a little bit. And I thought I will wear the provocateur cap because the topic is a little provocative today, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that it is, and I think it's provocative in the sense that because it's maybe we don't pay enough attention to it, and we just continue doing things the way that they've always been done, and we get comfortable with the known, and we don't like pushing ourselves into the unknown. So, I would say yes, it is a bit provocative.
Yeah. I just texted into the community if people have questions. So if you watch this live and you have questions, post them into the chat. We will bring them up and we try to answer them as good as we can. And of course, as well, if you watch this in recording or listen to it on the podcast later on, reach out to us if you have questions, if you have comments. We're always eager to get in contact and talk to you in different ways. But let's get
Yeah.
into the topic.
Let's get into it. So, for those who saw the post, if you've been watching live, the topic that we're going to be chatting about today is what's holding you back. And Jens and I had chatted about this over the course of the last week. And why we really settled on this topic and why we left it broad is because what we started with was the concept of what is holding you back from transforming your business. And then Jens challenged me and he said, why don't we leave it broader? Because in order to transform your business, you maybe also need to think about yourself. You need to think about the world in terms of society, what's maybe holding society back from transforming itself, and what are some of the bigger pictures and bigger puzzle pieces that we need to consider inside of that. So that's what we've got lined up today. Jens, maybe you want to kick us off with some of the thinking that was sparked when you first heard of this topic.
Yeah. So of course I'm all about business. So let's give you a little bit of perspective on that. I've been working and working for and with organizations my whole life, and what I've seen is that it's often different ways where organizations are held back, and we have had different conversations this week and last week as well, where we have seen that there are different levels of transformation, like personal transformations, business transformations. And it's often that there's the personal aspect which is often left out in the corporate setting. And that's why I want to start a little bit of that. But I'm truly believing it is linked to the business part. So if you don't transform as a person, if you don't develop as a person, if you don't take yourself to the next level on a continuous base, like we discussed in a couple of episodes in the past, is how do you do a continuous learning path for yourself and personal development path for yourself? And if you don't do that, it's holding you back. If you and then on the other hand is if you are not yourself, if you're playing a role, that's holding you back as well. So there's a lot of topics we can dive into today, but I think it will always lead towards the business is not transforming because individuals are holding the business back because they're holding themselves back or playing a role or trying to fit in. So there are a lot of aspects of we can dive into literally. What about you?
Yeah, there are a lot of aspects, Jens, and that's why I think it's so great. And I think it's maybe also that very nature in terms of why we are held back. is because when we think about the concept of what is holding us back, we don't know where to start. And if you think about that, it's that very notion of just starting with something and then involving the process, taking it a step further, and sort of navigating that as and when you come about the need to change. But I think for me, some of the things that popped into my head when I started thinking about this topic at a deeper level from an individual standpoint, and the reason I started thinking about it from an individual standpoint is because business is made up of people. And I think that in order to understand people, and Jens, we've chatted about this before in a different podcast around the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how you need to be aware of that when you start thinking about what is holding people back, but also what's motivating them. And I started around this concept of thinking about this is asking myself the question is, what if we thought of ourselves as a product? And the reason I went about thinking like that is one, because of some of the experiences that I've had in terms of working with product teams to develop and evolve products and evolve teams with inside of managing those products. And a product evolves. So when you release a product to market, you release a version of it. And then by the very nature of that, you've got a roadmap that you're playing to. You've got a roadmap or a system that you're working with to push that product to the next level. And potentially, maybe one of the things that's holding us back as individuals is that we don't think of ourselves and we don't give ourselves a roadmap. So we rather come into a situation where we say, "Hey, I'm leaving university now, and my first port of call is that I would like to get some form of employment." But that's where your thinking stops. You don't think and you don't ask yourself, "Hey, maybe what if I did this in 3 years, or what if I did this in 5 years?" And I think that notion of us not being able to think longer term or not pushing ourselves into that space of the unknown is one of the biggest things that's holding us back. And us not thinking about ourselves as products is potentially something interesting to think about when you think about how we can then push ourselves into the unknown.
Love that example. It's very cool. If we take that to the next level, a product is also fulfilling a function, which means fulfilling um, a purpose in itself. So if you link that then to a person, if you don't have a purpose yourself, like what are you doing? Why are you doing things? Um, is really understanding what your purpose is will help you how you can bring that to life in in a different way, and in a way that it's transforming you and transforming others around you. And then if we take it as well from a product perspective, the purpose is then solving a problem. So how do you focus on something that's bigger than yourself? Because a lot of people I see, and maybe that's more towards the experienced thinkers. I'm not too deep into the young thinkers on that topics. Is it's all about me, me, every day, every day, every day. I see it, and so often where it's people are selfish and they think about themselves first. And I get that from an experienced thinker perspective, because I mean, maybe you're 40, 50, 60 years old and you have given so much to the world. So you think then now it's my turn to take. But I truly believe if we really want to change and solve bigger problems in the world, we need to focus on others. We need to focus on giving rather than um, taking. And we have had a conversation before we started live. I was about to say, started recording that. Um, Now if you look back for the last year, I've spent so much money, energy, and sweat and tears into things, and I haven't got back from, if you think like in the old way, the monetary aspect. I was of course hoping to get back, and then and that's fine for me. It's more about how much more can I give. So I'm, for example, ramping up my podcast to 3 episodes per week again, because I've recorded so much already that it takes half a year to get the people on the show, which I've recorded like literally last week. But I think it's really all about how to use yourself and your purpose to do something good in this world, and don't focus too much on taking. It's all about how can we give more and change the world.
So that's a very, very powerful thing that you just said there, Jens. And I think what I'll tie it to is this concept of return of investment. So ROI, for those
Yeah.
who are familiar with the term. And when we think about ROI, we think about, we put something in and we want something out. So a simple
Mm.
example would be, if you're familiar with the advertising world or agencies, you spend a certain amount, so let's call it $500 that you spend on this advert, and you've now created the advert, you've got some cool creative that you're putting onto social media, and you're putting it onto social media, and now your return on investment on that social media post, you need to make more than the $500 that you've put in.
Mm.
And that's extraction. So we are now creating value. We now saying we want a return on the value that we're creating. And the return on the value needs to be greater than the amount of value that we put into it. And now I think that is very powerful when you start thinking about something is, what is holding us back? Is, if I think about that from a young thinker's perspective, I sometimes would love young thinkers to challenge my thinking on this. But when, as a young thinker, when you go into a situation, how are you showing up and what are you giving to that situation, rather than
Mm.
what are you thinking about getting out in the immediate term? So, for example, what is holding you back from taking a graduate program that is maybe not paying you as much as a big corporation? And one of the biggest examples in this space is, you should look for a boss that you can learn something from
Yeah.
inside of this space, not necessarily just the business that's paying you the most amount of money in the short term. And I think that, specifically from a young thinker's perspective, if you listen to what Jens just mentioned around his very notion of the way that he's gone about investing in this business, in this ecosystem that he's building out, there's something that we can all take away from that. There's a direct value that's been generated into the ecosystem. And now it's, how do you turn that into an ROI that is sustainable, that's giving longer term, and that's building things up together and not just in isolation.
Yeah. I would like to double click on the ROI. I think we need to redefine it from ROI. We keep the ROI, but instead of return on invest, we call return on impact. So what is the impact we are creating? And I'm a very, very focused numbers person. I'm trying to, because I believe in running a business through numbers will help you to understand which direction you can go and what helps you to do that. And you can't see that in this camera, but I have a whiteboard over there where I have numbers, which like details on web pages and stuff. It's just giving me input on a certain direction. So, and that's not directly the tricky thing is with return on impact is you can't often measure the impact. For example, if you take my course, which is like um, I want to inspire 1 million people to innovate in 2021, and I've set out to do that and to measure that in a way that I only take um, people who give me a testimonial as an impact and as a measurement. But I have like it's October, so I've literally per month I have one testimonial because not everyone is doing that. But I know that I've impacted way more people than I got testimonials. So it's always hard to measure. It's like how many people did I inspire to innovate and what did they do with that inspiration? So that's the hard part in impact. If you do something which is bigger than just, hey, I'm building a business, I want to create that amount of money, which you can measure, but it's not really impact.
So it's a fascinating thread, that ends, and I'm just going to pull on it and link it to focus. And I think one of the things that might be holding us back when we think about taking a step forward or putting ourselves into the unknown is this ability not to be able to focus specifically and intentionally on one thing.
Yeah.
And one thing may be for 3 months, it might be for 7 days, it might be for 3 hours. But in this world that we live in, there's so much that's happening. We're being pulled around from pillar to post. There's a lot of noise. There's so much things on social media. There's so much things happening inside of a business. And the ability to quiet down that noise, to calm your mind and to focus isn't something that comes naturally to everyone. And it's difficult to do.
Yeah.
And if we take what you're mentioning about you as being a numbers person, and you utilize numbers to help you drive your focus points, saying, hey, I should rather be focusing here because this is generating this amount of return on the impact that I'm putting in or what I'm generating. And if we think about that holistically from a focus perspective, how do we focus better so that we can create more of an return on impact? And I love that phrase, is because the impact then can become far reaching if we
Mm.
focus in on that, and then that impact piece can be multiplied or compounded, like we've mentioned before as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it. Was it this week or last week in one of our conversations that it's not just on what do I focus on. It's more about, or additionally about, what do you let go? What are you not doing? And that's often the tricky thing for a lot of people, specifically in business. Like, what are the
Mm.
things you're not doing?
Yeah.
What are the things you're consciously deciding? And I can give maybe a couple of super basic example. I was doing my daily vlog for 200 plus days, and what I've seen is it takes a lot of energy of me doing that. And the impact I was doing was that me talking about what I did that day is inward focus. So I get value out of that, but nobody else. So then I've decided I will reduce it to once a week, twice a week. And then I've seen it's not generating impact. It's not really helping anything. It's just, hey, I have a video, but it's not really helping me to do things. It helped me in the first 200. I got a lot out of that because I learned and trained myself. So that was a very, very good thing. But now I needed it to the next level, and that's why I've decided not doing it and taking a break on the smaller videos, just focusing on real podcasts like we do together, rather than doing a lot of smaller videos. And I still do one or two in between, but not too much. And that's just one of the things I have decided. If I want to get other things moving and get create impact, I shouldn't spend, let's say, 6 hours of a week focusing on smaller videos. If you take combine all the time with cutting and making them nice, I
Mm.
can take this 6 hours to focus on something which is really helping people to innovate. So that's why I've decided to say, hey, for example, I do this live shows now, which is way more inspirational and way more impacting people, because it's not just me, it's another person involved, and they will reach more people if they're in a live environment. So that's just one of the examples I've decided not to do, and that's that one of many I've stopped doing. And that's, I think, something we need to learn in a business perspective as well. What are the things that maybe work but are not creating impact? Because we are all focused on, or many people in business are focused on this return on invest, which I understand is important to keep a business, because I might be running out of money in the future as well, and then in worst case, I need to close my business. So I get all of that, but it's really important um, to look really into the impact piece.
Yeah. So let's tie a few things together here, Ian. So we've spoken about thinking of ourselves as a product and that product evolving and having a roadmap. We've spoken about what lessons we've both had in terms of what's potentially been holding us back in some of our thinking, and we've spoken about what you should consider stopping doing and what
Mm.
you're not doing and being clear around that. And we've spoken about focus. So if we think about this concept of what is holding us back, and specifically people, and we say now, what is stopping people from thinking about return on impact and prioritizing return on investment? Is it short-term focus? So are businesses too short-term focused because of the people that are inside of that business, and they're not too many, let's use an overused term of dreamers inside of a business that are big thinkers? Or is it actually constructs that we've brought into this business world and into this world that are now guiding the way that society think in general? So
Mm.
that's stopping us from taking a step forward or pushing us into the unknown. And I think that that's where some of the discussions that we've had around entrepreneurial culture, for example, can help you with maybe thinking about, hey, how do I push myself into that next phase? Or how do I take that next step? And we've said it before in different situations, is you don't necessarily need to be an entrepreneur to have an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how would we go about solving that? Because I know that you like action, you like impact. So maybe we can give a few takeaways and maybe just brainstorm quickly in this live environment around how people could go about doing that.
Yeah, I have two small stories to that. I've interviewed two people over the last 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, and got quite an interesting perspective on that, of how they do it or how they have learned to do it. So one was Sanjay, who was working with Elon Musk in the past. So he was employee number 7 in PayPal, and I mean, everyone who is in the innovation world knows Elon Musk, that he's like an extreme thinker in a lot of things. He's looking like 30, 50 years ahead. And it's really about this ability to, often we say live in the moment, but he's literally living in the future from a mindset perspective with a lot of things. But then as well, utilizing the knowledge he has in a very specific way. He's always going into deconstructing things to the most simple system, and then looking into how can we make these smaller pieces better. And that goes from how do we get to the Mars, and how do we build spaceships that are able to do that? How do we do that in a way that we can reuse pieces of the spaceships? And that's just a super basic example he has pushed forward and has made happen. So this basic innovation thinking, prototyping, reusing things, and doing things forward. Another example is, which was literally yesterday, I was in a live show with Rex, who is a Dutch innovation consultant. And what he was saying is people need to learn to play again. So you have you're if you take my daughter, she's now getting 4 next month. She is playing naturally. She's making fun. She's doing really interesting things, which we don't do as elders or old people, let's say, like this anymore. So he was saying is that you need, when you do this in a business environment, you need to enable people to play again. You need to enable people to be the child again, to take this bigger things. Like if you're a child, you want to get a firefighter, you want to get an airplane pilot or whatever. It's like, if you ask me, I would never come up with that right now. It's like, hey, I want to get an airplane pilot, which you still can do if you want to,
Mm.
but it's
So
more, you don't think in that way anymore.
yeah, and I think maybe there's something there, Jens, just in those two examples that you gave us, this concept of we're so focused on the doing, and that's potentially holding us back, is because we're not making time
Yeah.
to explore. We're not making time to dissect, to deconstruct, to think differently about the way we are doing things. And that is maybe very focused on this notion of growth and this notion of return of investment. Because, hey, I can't go and spend 30 minutes extra of my day deconstructing my lessons that I've learned because I've got to get to this next Zoom call, or because I've got to get to this next meeting. And it's so much back to back to back things that we don't make time for play. And if you think about the formative years of your life, for example, there's this study that was done around when a baby's growing up, or an infant is growing up, and they listen to classical.
Losing.
And if you think about that from an overview perspective, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And how does that evolve from a evolutionary perspective in terms of the way that you go about thinking, but also the way that you go about connecting with people from an interaction standpoint? Because I think, again, just going back to the concept of people, is one of the things that's potentially stopping us or holding us back is, one, we don't make the time to focus on play
We're losing
because
you.
we're so focused on this task that we have right in front of us.
Yeah. You have been gone. I'm not sure if you're back now. Let's keep it going until Josh is back. Um,
Am I back now?
yeah, you're back. I'm just starting to talk about time to think is literally one of the key parts which is missing in a lot of people's life. And I've seen it, if you take myself, the last 2 weeks as well. I'm doing a course on programming AI and learning a lot of things around AI and how this works from from a commercial aspect and as well from a technology aspect. And I'm focused on the application of AI. So it's not programming AI and really deeply into that. But what I've seen, because I do this course and I spend every day at least 2-3 hours on this, I didn't give myself the time I normally do, where I go deep into my thoughts and mapping things out. So I was literally only in the now and only in the operational mood to keep the business running, to keep everything, like all the balls in the air. And what I feel now after 2 weeks, or already, like it's like I'm exhausted with this. I'm tired and I'm not thinking clear. So I really need to go back and take my time to think again, look into what did I learn, how did I do that, what is important of it, instead of, oh, now I'm grinding through it, which you need to do sometimes. But right now I've decided, like, okay, I need to focus on a couple of specific things. I want to learn that, but I will not spend too much energy on other things. And then I will take time each day to think and really
Yeah.
process the thinking.
Yeah. And that's sort of where it comes now back to, like we started the conversation with, is, thinking of ourselves as a product,
Hmm.
and what is the evolution inside of that. And in terms of things that develop, things do take time. And I think sometimes what's holding us back from giving ourselves that time is because we're not very good with allowing ourselves to have that time. We think that we
Yeah.
may be cheating ourselves, or we're cheating the business if we go and do something. And if you think about this from a pure business perspective, just quickly, as you know, there's businesses give their employees learning development budgets, for example, where if you're an employee inside of a big organization, you can have budget to go and spend on specific courses. And now, if you think about that from a learning perspective, what learnings are you bringing back into the business? It's all
Hmm.
good and well to say that we have these things where, you've got these opportunities to go and learn, but now let's bring it back inside of the innovation practices that Jens and I are both passionate about. What are you actually doing when you bring those learnings back into your business? What are they
Yeah.
changing in the way that you go about operating things? And I think that, for me, as a young thinker, is something that I've been thinking quite a lot about around this notion of transformation. Is because sometimes I think that when we go through different changes in life, we think that we are complete, but
Hmm.
actually, we are not ever complete. We are always evolving, always changing, always learning. And yes, we go through different formal stages. We go from school to university to becoming an adult to being employed, but that is continuous, and it never happens one fixed example. And to go back to Jens, what you were mentioning about playing, is think about it, you're in a sandpit and you're playing, you're building, you knock the sandcastle down, you build the
Yeah.
sandcastle back up, and essentially that's something that's holding business back. And it's holding business back because people inside those businesses don't have enough environments and time to do that.
Yeah. Le- I agree. Let's dive a little bit into the business aspect. I think it's really, so starting with the personal aspect is key. Um, and everyone inside the business, but I think it's then part of an organization as well to look into how do you enable transformation in an organization that is naturally happening. And I think a lot of organizations have that on their agenda, that they need to transform to be ready for the future and really work on that topics. But what they often do is they start too big. So they're saying, hey, we need to transform the whole business, and now we are creating a program, and it's now 50, 100, whatever amount of people into this transformation program. And then they're taking the big elephant, instead of saying, hey, let's build a small team, let's say less than 10 people, depending on how big the company is, and look into how can we build a virus inside the organization that helps the organization to transform. And virus, not in a bad way, it's more that there's a positive infection inside the organization, that the new ways of thinking the organization needs to be future fit will grow inside of the business, and then will spread like a virus inside of the business. And I think that's what I've seen a lot of organizations fail with, very large programs, is because they're just pushing it. They're pushing it from the top and trying to get it into the organization as fast as possible. And then there's a lot of backlash and a lot of back push from the organization, and that slows things down. And people are not doing it because they're convinced in doing it. They're doing it because the management is saying it. And I think that's something organizations need to learn, and leaders in organizations need to take themselves as well accountable and looking into how can we do transformation that they are happening, because I truly believe it's like an exponential curve. If you start small and get this virus infection into the organization towards transformation, enabling and empowering people to do that, it will in the end will get go faster than any other normal program. But it's not fast in the first couple of months, maybe even half a year or a year. But that's I think going back from a company perspective, what is the long term focus and the short term focus? If you want to be future fit, it's not done in half a year. It might take 5 years to be future fit. But if you start small and figuring prototyping your way towards the future, it will help the organization to grow and the individuals inside the organization as well.
Yeah, that's very powerful, Jens. And I think from a timing perspective, is also COVID has potentially given organizations a different view on time
Yeah.
and how quickly organizations can respond to things when they need to respond to things. And I think that that's also something that has maybe been holding a business back, is because they haven't thought about how they could break up different teams inside organizations to drive a bigger transformation, because they're too worried about the destabilization that may occur if they engage in a practice like that. And I think that the last 18 months or so, when businesses have been forced to change due to COVID, has also created a bigger environment where they can feel more open to experimentation, because they've actually had to experiment in real time because they had no other option
Yeah,
to get them to be able to cope with or adapt to COVID-19.
absolutely. So let's give a couple of practical tips in the end, and then we bring it home. So if you're an organization and you want to have the need and the willingness to transform, take your time and look into how do you get the people first, which starts on both ends for me. So the management, and even more important, the owners of the business and the supervisory board, like the top of the top of the top of the organization, need to be willing to transform and take a step into that to say, We want to do this and we make it happen. It doesn't matter what comes." So it's really looking into, we take time to transform our organization because we know we need to do it to be future fit. That's for me the starting point. And then you work with people across the business to build a very, very small team, and looking into how can you prototype this way of thinking, and looking into where are you right now and how do you want to transform into the future, and how do you validate this way of thinking what the future is, and building the future in a very, very simple way, and doing it that you create impact straight away. So it's really quick wins from a perspective of impact, not from a perspective of return on invest. And that is then spreading the success, and the impact will spread in the organization. So that's my recommendation. Have been working in large organizations over the last 20 years without a red
Yeah,
t-shirt.
Jens. Yeah, there's some great nuggets that you shared, and like you mentioned, it's from your experience having been involved inside of those environments. And potentially the one element that I'll just add to that is to say, how are you enabling people to transform inside of your organization? Because I think it's so often we can say, what is holding you back, or what is holding this organization back from transforming? But you maybe are not focusing on the how.
Hmm.
And by focusing on the how, you can then unlock people's imagination, you can unlock people's creativity, you can allow them to do their best work. And by enabling that how, and how can I contribute, how am I empowered, you can then answer the question of, what is holding me back from transforming my business, myself, or my organization.
Yeah, it's a wrap.
Cool. That's a wrap. Thanks, Jens. Good to riff again. Good to share some thinking. And hopefully there's some nuggets. Well, I know there are some nuggets inside of this, and it's really just around how people put it all together. And if they want
Yeah.
to reach out to us, how can they do that? Where can people find us?
Yeah. So of course we have the website of this podcast, and the main website behind that is the xyzplayground.com. So you will find us there, but you will find us as well on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. And you have literally in every post we do, you will have the possibility to connect to us. So if you're an organization um, who has the need to transform and want to look into how you do that with the the way of thinking of, hey, we need to connect the generations of our business to make this happen, then we might be able to help you. So reach out to us, and we're happy to see how we can support you. Josh, I wish you a lot of luck on your trail run today and fun. Is it today or tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow. So we've
Oh,
still got
tomorrow.
some work to do, but yeah, always enjoy these live sessions, Jens. Thanks for definitely pushing my thinking, and yeah, looking forward to another one soon, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for everyone
Cool.
watching this live, see you next Friday, 11 a.m. Central European time for another live show. Thank you very much and see you.